During lunch, my sister joked, "Your kid's the type who'll always need a helmet and a hand." Laughter followed. My son looked down at his plate. I said, "At least mine doesn't need me to pay their rent and tuition." He went pale. Mom whispered, "Let it go." I didn't. I told them before. I told them not to talk about my son like that. I said it gently the first time. Then I said it more directly. Then I stopped saying anything because it was clear none of them cared. So when Meredith looked across the table and said that thing about Caleb, that he was the kind of kid who'd always need a helmet and a hand, she knew exactly what she was doing. The worst part wasn't even her words. It was the way everyone else reacted. My dad made that low, wheezy chuckle he uses when he doesn't want to get involved. My aunt covered her mouth like she was trying not to laugh but failing. Even Claire, Meredith's perfect daughter, giggled into her cranberry juice. I looked at Caleb. He was staring at his plate like he wanted to disappear into it. He's 13. He's quiet, cautious, not the kind of kid who climbs trees or plays football or argues when someone interrupts him. But he's smart. He reads things adults wouldn't understand. He feels everything too deeply. And because he doesn't act like the rest of the world, they treat him like he's broken. That's when I said it. At least mine doesn't need me to pay their rent and tuition. It landed like a slap. Meredith went pale. She was still holding her wine glass, but she wasn't drinking anymore. She looked at me like I'd just stabbed her through the tablecloth. Claire stopped chewing. Dad dropped his fork. Mom said let it go. I didn't. Because this wasn't the first time. This wasn't new. It started years ago when Caleb was 5 and didn't want to hug people he didn't know. Meredith called him weird. Said I was raising him too soft. When he was 7 and didn't like birthday parties, she said I was isolating him. When he was 10 and needed extra time on a math test, she asked if he was slow. She never said these things with kindness. Always with that smug look like she was just so grateful her daughter was normal. Claire, who had been handed every opportunity since birth, who was still living at home at 23, whose grades were just good enough to get into a school Meredith could barely afford, and who had 2 failed internships and no job prospects. But that didn't matter. What mattered was that Claire played soccer. Claire went to parties. Claire made eye contact. My son was an easy target. But here's what none of them knew. I'd been planning this. Not that moment, not the words I'd thrown at her over the turkey, but something bigger. I'd had enough of this fake family, this routine of getting together just to pretend we liked each other. They never respected me. They pitied me. That night after we got home, Caleb went to his room. I knew he was upset, but he didn't want to talk about it. That's how he is. I sat down at the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and I started making phone calls. This wasn't just going to be about Meredith. It was going to be all of them. They thought I was quiet. They thought I would stay quiet. They had no idea who I used to be. They were about to find out. They only know this version of me. Rose, the single mom who works from home, picks her son up from tutoring, brings the same potato salad to every holiday, and leaves early when things get uncomfortable. They forgot the version of me that used to be dangerous. Before Caleb was born, before I had to carry the full weight of being everything for someone else, I was sharp. I worked in corporate investigations, the kind that digs up things people pay good money to keep buried. I knew how to find paper trails that weren't supposed to exist. I knew how to spot lies just by the pauses between words. I knew how to break someone without raising my voice. I gave all that up when I had Caleb. Because raising him right mattered more than anything else. He needed stability, not someone chasing the next lawsuit or leaking evidence to regulatory boards. I thought I could just be a mom and that maybe the past could stay where it belonged. But now it was useful again. And I wasn't going to waste it. The next day I made a list. It had 4 names. Meredith, Claire, my cousin Jonah, and my Aunt Sheila. All of them had taken shots at my son in one way or another. Jonah always asked if Caleb had a diagnosis. Not out of concern but curiosity, like my child was some experiment. Sheila used to introduce him to people by saying he was shy but sweet, as if she needed to apologize for him before he even spoke. And Claire. She was worse than Meredith. She liked to bait him with questions he wouldn't answer, then roll her eyes like he was stupid. And everyone always said the same thing afterward. She's just a kid, she didn't mean anything by it. No one ever said that for Caleb. I started with Claire. I knew a guy at her university, someone from my old network, someone who owed me a favor. It didn't take long to get her academic record. She was failing 2 courses, on academic probation, and barely hanging on by taking extra credit in courses she wasn't even officially enrolled in. I also found something else. A paper she'd submitted last semester, plagiarized almost entirely from an article published in 2019. Word for word. I emailed it anonymously to the dean. I knew how the system worked. The school wouldn't expel her right away, but it would trigger a formal review, and Meredith would get the notification in her inbox within the week. Next was Jonah. He liked to pretend he was successful. Always bragged about how well his business was doing. Some startup consultancy supposedly helping mid-size brands expand internationally. I found the lawsuit he tried to hide, buried under a different LLC name. A former client had accused him of fraud, and the settlement was sealed but not sealed well enough. I sent a summary of the case to 3 of his current clients, along with the tax liens he'd managed to dodge for 2 years. I also found out his business license had quietly expired 3 months ago. I made sure the state licensing board got that information too. Sheila wasn't difficult either. She had a little side hustle selling skincare online, built on a network marketing scheme that she swore was legitimate. I pulled the receipts, literally. 10 of them. She'd charged people for products that were never shipped, including a batch that was recalled and illegal to sell in the US. I forwarded everything to the platform she used to process payments. 3 days later, her seller account was terminated. I saved Meredith for last. She was the reason for all of it, really. If she had kept her mouth shut at that table, I probably would have just moved on like always. But she didn't. She laughed. She humiliated my son. And she didn't even flinch. So I dug deeper. And what I found I wasn't expecting. Not just that Claire was failing. Not just that Meredith had maxed out 2 credit cards paying for her daughter's second attempt at college. No. What I found was that Meredith had taken out a second mortgage on her house last year. Quietly. Probably hoping her husband wouldn't notice. I didn't even know they were having financial trouble. Then I found something else. Something worse. The charity fundraiser she hosted last spring. The one she wouldn't stop bragging about. She hadn't donated everything. Not even close. She skimmed off the top. Maybe she was desperate. Maybe she thought no one would ever check. But someone did. Me. And I knew exactly who to send that information to. The email went out at 2:03 a.m. Not from my usual account. I used a clean one, no digital footprints, no name attached. It went directly to the board of the local children's hospital. The same one Meredith raised money for during her charity brunch back in April. I attached screenshots, PDFs, and copies of the final totals from the event registry versus what was actually deposited into the hospital's donation account. I didn't explain it in the body of the email. I didn't have to. It spoke for itself. Within 48 hours, the board launched a formal inquiry. Meredith still had no idea what was coming. Meanwhile, Claire's academic dishonesty report triggered a hold on her final grades. The dean's office flagged her for review. She wouldn't be returning next semester. Jonah's clients began pulling out quietly. One of them even filed a Better Business Bureau complaint. And Sheila? She went live on Facebook 3 nights in a row trying to defend her business. But every post was flooded with angry comments from customers who realized they'd been scammed. I didn't tell Caleb any of this. He wouldn't have understood the satisfaction. Or maybe he would have, and I didn't want him to. I didn't want him to carry that weight. This wasn't his revenge. It was mine. Then the calls started. The first one was Meredith. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. He didn't mention Caleb. Didn't apologize. Just asked if I knew anything about someone accusing her of mismanaging charity funds. She sounded shaky, which was new for her. The next day Mom called. She opened with the usual. You went too far. I said nothing. Just listened. Let her talk herself into corners. She tried to sound neutral, but of course she was defending Meredith. He always did. They're saying she might lose her job, Rose. Good. Then came the part where Mom said the thing she always says. Family's all we have. That's never been true. A few hours later I got a knock on the door. I saw through the peephole it was Claire. She looked smaller than usual. I opened the door just enough for her to see my face. She didn't even say hello. He asked me why I hated them. I told her I didn't. I just stopped letting them walk over us. She said she was sorry for the things she said to Caleb, for laughing at him for going along with the jokes. She said she didn't mean to hurt him. But she did. I asked her if she'd ever once defended him when Meredith made fun of him. She didn't answer. I closed the door. It wasn't about hate. It never was. It was about showing them there were consequences. The next day, Jonah posted a long, pathetic thread on social media about people trying to tear down Black-owned businesses, even though none of the emails I sent said anything about race. He was trying to rally sympathy, but the screenshots spoke louder. One of the clients he scammed replied publicly with the settlement agreement. The comments turned on him fast. Sheila texted me a single sentence. "You've ruined my life." I deleted it. And then there was Meredith. She showed up the day before Christmas Eve. No warning. No call. She stood on my porch in the freezing cold, clutching her purse like it was all she had left. When I opened the door, she tried to smile. It didn't land. She asked if we could talk. I didn't invite her in. She said she didn't know what came over her that day at Thanksgiving. Said she was stressed. Said she didn't mean what she said. Said she didn't realize how deeply it cut. But here's the thing. You don't accidentally humiliate a child. That takes intention. That takes something rotten. She asked if Caleb was okay. I told her he's better than okay. He's brilliant. He's kind. He's everything she'll never understand. She nodded like she accepted that. Then she said she was sorry. For all of it. For every year of belittling, for the jabs, for the comparisons, for everything she let her daughter get away with. I believed her. I just didn't care anymore. Christmas Day came, and for the first time in over a decade, I didn't go to my parents' house. The group text started buzzing around 10 a.m. "Where are you? Mom's waiting on you and Caleb. Claire made cookies, come on." I didn't answer. Caleb and I stayed in. I made cinnamon rolls from scratch, let him pick the music, and we watched documentaries while wrapped in blankets. He didn't ask why we weren't with the family. Maybe he knew. Maybe he'd known longer than I thought. Around noon, my mom called. Again. I let it ring out. Then she left a voicemail. "You're breaking this family apart, Rose." "Oh. The family broke a long time ago." I just stopped pretending. At 4 p.m. Meredith showed up again. This time she didn't knock. She just stood outside texting. "Please. Just come back for dinner. We need to fix this." I didn't reply. Then the final message came. It wasn't from Meredith or my mom or anyone else. It was from Caleb's old teacher. The one who used to call me twice a week to tell me that Caleb struggled with participation, like his silence meant something was wrong with him. He said, "I saw what your sister posted. I don't know the whole story, but I wanted you to know. I always thought your son was incredible. I'm sorry I didn't say that sooner." I didn't know what she was talking about. So I looked. Meredith had posted on Facebook. A long, pitiful, publicly performative apology. Tagged me. Tagged Caleb. Said she was reflecting. That family wounds cut the deepest, and she was working on herself. Said she was heartbroken over what she said at Thanksgiving, and wanted to repair the relationship before it was too late. The comment section was full of people who knew nothing, saying things like, "Proud of you for taking accountability. Hope you guys find peace. Family is everything." She wanted sympathy, not accountability. She wanted applause for finally admitting what she did, but she left out the rest. The years of digs, the humiliation, the fake concern, the jokes that never felt like jokes. She didn't mention the way her daughter treated mine like a ghost. She didn't mention the fundraiser money. But I did. I logged into an old account, one no one could trace. And I commented, "You stole money from a children's hospital, Meredith. Sit this one out." Then I posted the files. All of them. The donation registry. The screenshots. The unedited spreadsheet showing the $8,300 discrepancy between what she collected and what the hospital received. Within 20 minutes, her post was locked. Her account deleted. At 7:30 p.m. I got a text from my dad. The same man who never defended me, never once stopped Meredith from tearing me or my son apart. "Come by tomorrow. Let's talk. I think we all owe you that." "Oh. You don't owe me anything. You owed Caleb your respect when he was 5, and you laughed at him for flinching at fireworks. You owed me your support when Meredith called him slow, and you stayed quiet. You owed us protection. It's too late now." By the day after Christmas, the apologies were pouring in. But not one of them sounded like they meant anything. Claire sent Caleb a message through one of his gaming apps. She never used to even acknowledge his interests. Now suddenly she was trying to bond over Minecraft like nothing ever happened. I deleted the message before he saw it. He didn't need her rewriting history. Mom left another voicemail. This one sounded different. Her voice was tight like she'd been crying. She said she realized now that they hadn't protected Caleb enough. That letting the jokes slide, calling him sensitive, brushing off the comments, it was wrong. That they'd all failed him. She asked if we could sit down. Said Meredith wanted to apologize in person. Said Jonah and Sheila were deeply shaken by what happened and were also ready to make things right. I didn't respond. Because where were they when Caleb came home crying from his cousin's birthday party after Claire called him a robot in front of all the other kids? Where were they when Meredith told me to my face that I was raising someone who'd never survive in the real world? Where were they when I sat on the floor of my bathroom at midnight, Googling occupational therapists and sensory specialists, feeling like I was the only person in the world who saw how bright and capable my son really was? They didn't just mock him. They erased him. And now that they're the ones getting emails, calls, losing contracts, facing reviews, they suddenly understand what hurt feels like. Let them. That afternoon Caleb and I drove upstate. I didn't tell anyone we were leaving. Just packed a couple bags, turned off my phone and hit the road. I'd booked us a quiet cabin weeks earlier, just in case I needed space from the family for the holidays. I hadn't planned on using it. I had wanted to believe maybe this year would be different. But it wasn't. So we lit a fire, made hot chocolate and watched the snow fall through the big window in the living room. Caleb smiled more in those 2 days than he had the entire month. On the second night he asked me something. He said, "Are we ever going back to those dinners?" I looked at him for a second. I could see the hope in his eyes but also the fear. That maybe I'd say yes. That maybe I'd tell him he had to keep sitting at tables where no one really saw him. I told him the truth. No, we're not going back. He didn't say anything right away. But I saw it in his face. Relief. He turned back toward the window and said, "Okay." That was it. Just okay. Like he finally felt safe. Like he trusted me. Like maybe after all this he believed I'd keep him safe no matter what. That night I opened my phone again. I had over 40 unread messages. Apologies. Explanations. Excuses. Promises. Too late. They had their chance to be good people. They had years. Now they could sit with what they did. We came back after New Year's. No calls. No texts. The silence was finally real. Meredith never recovered from what came out. Her employer dropped her. The charity pressed charges. Claire didn't go back to school. Jonah's business folded. Sheila disappeared from social media completely. But none of that mattered anymore. What mattered was Caleb waking up without dread. What mattered was no more fake birthdays, no more whispers, no more sitting at long tables where he was only ever tolerated. They all tried again in the weeks that followed. Cards in the mail. Long typed-out letters. Voicemails from Mom that started with, "I understand now." But understanding isn't enough. I didn't respond. They wanted forgiveness. They wanted to say sorry and move on. But this isn't a sitcom. We don't reset after the credits roll. They made my son feel like less than. For years. Now they don't get to be part of his life. They lost us. Forever.